The trades are paying more money than ever before, but how do you get actually into them? I'm John Capel of Skill Stigma. I'm here to make pathways into them for you. Today, we are talking about HVAC installers. This is a huge deal as we think about how people live and work across the entire world. We're going to look today at least nationwide, okay? There is a tremendous amount of work, and the HVAC industry in and of itself is a highly regarded and highly desirable trade. It's something wherein you would have to learn not only about the ultimate furnace or air conditioning, but all the pieces and components that actually coincide with it. For example, when you have a furnace, you don't just get to create a fire in someone's home without having a whole bunch of safety precautions and emissions regulations around it. So, being a person who installs HVAC is a person who is pretty well rounded. It's almost no one who's going to go into this career knowing all things. It's going to take some time and some training. And so, this is a career that you can have some major steps to going forward and really benefits people's lives. If you look at the changes that HVAC kind of systems have made for us, it has been absolutely tremendous. Look at air conditioning, for example. About 60 years ago or so is when we really started to use air conditioning at volume. It put Atlanta, for example, on the map. It was just too dang hot for people to really consider building their lives there. And once air conditioning came into play, well, it may be hot during the day, it may be hot doing work outside, but guess where you get to go escape to? Into your nice, cool, and controlled environment at your house. And this is something that we kind of take for advantage now. We get a little bit persnickety about just the precise amount of temperature that's going in there. But what it does for us is it really creates a wonderful life experience, right? Just like warm showers today, we can just kind of expect that the houses and businesses that we live and work in are at temperatures that really coincide with good productivity, good health, and of course, safe practices as well. We're no longer burning natural gas directly right into our living room, for example, right? This trade is absolutely booming. It is stable. It's going nowhere. It is always innovating. There are always things to be learning, and it is a trade that you can make a tremendous amount of money in. What we're going to try and do here in this blog is to try and reduce down our vision of HVAC into the installation of this kind of equipment. It is a good note here on the front end that big names like this, let's say electricians, let's say welding, let's say HVAC, for example, they all have these splinter trades that you might be able to get into. I learned that myself in my own chosen trade in the STEAM world, right? So that's what we're going to be looking at. We want to say, what does the training look like? What is the life look like? And what can you expect if you want to consider a career in HVAC installation? What we're going to do first is actually look through a 10-step plan. And the first question is, what do HVAC installers actually do? And so some of that's a little bit. What does HVAC actually stand for? Is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. What we're looking at is, systems can be really out of date. We made a transition away from residential steam boiler systems into furnace systems a good long while ago. Let's say about 60 or 70 years ago is when we made that transition. And what that allowed us for is that many people now could afford to heat their homes in very efficient ways and much more safe ways as well. The problem is that furnaces don't last as long as boilers, and what that has required us is that maybe sooner than you think, a new installation of a furnace in your house or in the building is going to be necessary. So for HVAC installers, this is a job that not only happens once in a while, but it's something that can happen in a home today, maybe every 10 or 15 years, creating a good amount of revenue, creating a good amount of actually workload that you really could just focus on the installation of this equipment. But it's not just about furnaces, it's also about air conditioning as well. Of course, you can remember on any hot day on your way to work, or some maybe you've been working outside, maybe even after just a lunch break, being able to walk into that cooled, ventilated system is just a joy and a treat. And so that makes your job being with ductwork, with wiring, with actual big pieces of equipment, pumps, it'll be with control systems. There's a lot involved in actually getting this installed. There's a lot of planning that gets involved, whether it be a house or a business that you'll be installing this into. This is not only just to make sure that it's safe, not only to make sure that it works, but to make sure that it's efficient as well. Companies will pay big dollars to have installers who know what they're doing do their job, because it actually increases the productivity of workers in a workplace. The stats would show that if you can hold a temperature in the office between 70 and 72 degrees, we can increase the productivity of everyone in that room up to about 150% or 1.5 times. And that kind of makes sense. That number is very large, but what you're kind of thinking about here is if you're very hot and sweaty, or if you're shivering at your desk, both of those are detracting you from the work that you actually want to be doing. And to really dial in the reality and the goal and the beauty of this job as it actually changes the work and the abilities of people is that it's very rarely outside 70 to 72 degrees. That's pretty precise. And so the job that you have is almost constantly on, whether it be at home in that installation, maybe it's out in a big commercial building as well. Maybe it's a city hall, maybe it's an apartment complex, maybe it's condos. There's so many different areas where this is actually being used for the benefit of so many people. Let's look at some of the baseline requirements. These are some things that you should have to actually really consider taking another step into this career. One is that you will need your high school diploma or your GED. You're going to be able to need to drive as well. Have your driver's license as you go on to service calls, as you go on to a new job site, and that sort of thing. And it would be really beneficial if you come into this game with not only a aptitude, but maybe even a desire to have good math skills and have a physical ability, because you will be lifting things, crawling through things. It can be pretty physical in that way as you go to install it. If there is no system installed, by the way, then it is either kind of cold or warm, too warm as you're in the attic of somebody's house as well. So you have to have an ability to work through some of those uncomfortable moments as you be able to bring that system on and deliver the heat in the cold. There are some good safety basics that you should consider here, some things that you can even get ahead of. For example, you might get your OSHA 10 and 30. Those cards will help you to get the certification to understand safety rules on a job construction site. These are things that you can do right now, very little cost, and leverage a conversation of employment. The other thing that you might want to consider is some EPA certification. There's a universal, but there's also a 608 certification, looking kind of more narrowly at refrigeration as well. So as we consider actually cooling things, we need different kinds of fluids to absorb the heat in the room and shake it off out into another environment. We very often will use refrigerant. Sometimes in industrial facilities, we'll use something like ammonia as well. And so that will require even further training and licensing. Now we want to look at some of the pathways to your training. I know your uncle used to go into the basement and kick the furnace and it seems like it hums on, but that's probably not a great way to get started yourself. This is like some deep learning and pretty extensive learning, because not only will you be installing new systems, you'll probably have some maintenance on older systems as well, as you're just involved in HVAC itself. It would serve you well to know those things. So there are a couple pathways to actually getting this training. One of those things would be through a trade school or a technical college. There are programs that are as short as 6 to 12 months to get you some certificate, and even associate programs that would extend to about 2 years. These are things that you could be doing after high school or even during high school to get you prepared for this type of career going forward. This is an investment, certainly of dollars, that can get you into a career that you would use, for a very long time. but it would be best for you, I think, in a place right now and listening to this series in general to never think that this is something that I have to do for 30 years. If that's a joy to you to think that, great. But for many people, I think thinking in terms of the next 5 to 10 years is a much better and more accurate slice because you have no idea what's going to happen in the future. Measuring your joy within this career on such a 30-year, 40-year kind of career trek here is going to be a little bit overwhelming. So take the next 5, 10 years and do this, and you'll carry that skill with you forever. Another pathway that would be a little bit longer would be an apprenticeship program. But this is one where you're not just paying a school to teach you, you're actually going to be getting your training on the job and probably weekends and nights. They might actually team up with the same kinds of trade schools or certificate programs where you will be going on site to do the work, but also in class to learn some of those works, maybe be in labs as well to look at certain kinds of equipments, wiring diagrams, and actual boards that you're going to be troubleshooting and showing and learning your knowledge. This is probably one of the more investment heavy of your time options available to you, but at the end of it, you should absolutely feel that you have the skills available to really deserve a good pay rate. HVAC apprenticeships are not a very rare thing. There are things that are pretty often out there. And what I would encourage you to do is to do some research, maybe even talk to some graduates from those areas and say, how was it successful for you? Were there certain things that you changed to make sure they actually learned the material and it wasn't just all book or test related as well? That by the end of this program, you actually can go out there and troubleshoot a problem, install a new system, and make it work for the people who need it to work. Lastly, another consideration here is that you don't have to actually go to school. You can actually get directly hired and become a helper in that area. Be honest about your skills. Maybe come in with some basic knowledge of electrical wiring, have some knowledge of even some of the theories of fluid movement or thermodynamics. These types of things would help you actually get used to it. There are some online programs that are really short that you can get involved in that actually use virtual reality as well. So it can be some kind of a digital hands-on approach here. But as you actually work in that field, as we always want to have kind of a notice or a warning here in a blog like this, is to make sure that whoever you're working for is actually committed to you to make sure that you're learning the things that need to be learned for skills not only that are helpful for them, but helpful to your life and beyond. By learning those skills, it's also helpful for them because you can go ahead and complete jobs and be a competent person in the HVAC world. So it is not something that you're just trying to take away from them, but something that you're also trying to benefit the business that they're working in as well. Just make sure that you have a good connection with that company and that they have an understanding of your current skills and your future goals. There are licensing rules for HVAC installation that are very often state dependent. Not every state would require this, but we would encourage you, of course, depending on where you want to work and what types of systems even maybe that you'd like to work on, that there may be some kind of actual training, an exam that you have to take, a card that you must carry, something that proves your competence at a state level. Sometimes it's EPA related, and sometimes the things and fluids that you're working with, we talked about refrigerant before or ammonia, for example, those areas are HVAC related. You might not need something for the furnace, but you need it for the chilling side of the work that you do, for example. So be very aware of the kinds of places that you want to work. The more you go into commercial, the more you go into industrial work, the more potential money that you can make in those areas, but it's going to probably be more ridden with licensing as well. As we get into more commercial properties, you move away from furnaces and move back into boilers, for example, and you're going to start using fluids in the chilling section that are really going to be dangerous to the environment and to people because they work so well. We still continue to use them, but it will require you to have some knowledge of those things. So look in the future, kind of see where you'd like to land and look in your environment and see what's required of you of those next steps. So what do these jobs look like? Well, they are very varied. Think about wherever people are. So that could be in their homes, it could be in apartment complexes, it could be in condos, it could be in businesses, it can be in more commercial warehouse real estate, right? It could also be in industrial facilities where there's a process going on. It could be in food manufacturing, for example, not so much for the people, but it's for the context of the actual processes that we're making. What if you're in a dairy facility, right? There's a certain amount of chilling that has to happen in an entire room for things that we are actually trying to manufacture. So there's a lot of contexts. Some, I would say most of the time, is the context that comes to our mind is for people, but sometimes it's also for processes that we're trying to maintain these temperatures. And so that could take you in all sorts of places. And therefore, it's also going to give you an exposure to all different kinds of systems. I've really only mentioned like furnaces, for examples, a little bit about boilers and chilling systems as well, but you might actually be in a solar assisted kind of a system. Maybe it's geothermal. Maybe there are other kinds of refrigeration that you're going to get into as well. There are always more ways coming on the scene that I see. Heat pumps are a good example of this. People are moving to maybe not burning natural gas, but they're burning hydrogen as another option. We're looking at electrodes. There's all different kinds of ways to heat and cool. We're using CO2 now as a refrigerant. It is a kind of trade that you have to continuously say in a humble way, I need to learn about the next thing and be open to that, right? The door is never shut on learning in this way. And the more systems that you know of, are aware of, the more clients that you can help, and likely the more money that you can make. And speaking of which, let's talk about the pay and the outlook on these jobs. So the median pay right now for HVAC installers is about $60,000 a year. And this is not going to be including any overtime, as we always try to discuss here, extra jobs, extra commission that would be involved in that as you go to sell a new job, for example. The top percent of the earners in the country, what is stated is about $80,000 a year. And I have to just say, that from my own experience, I can hear people kind of scoffing in the background because they're making far more money than that. I can't say for sure that you'd be able to break $100,000, but I think it's worthy of your exploration of this. I know many people that are doing very well that are involved in the industry of HVAC, and they have a really happy kind of stable future here. What I see more than anything is that there is such a lack of people in this trade. They're often called into emergency scenarios, not emergency like safety, but like it's cold this night and the furnace kicked off. Can you kick it back on, right? Well, we can't wait until the morning. That doesn't help all the people that are sitting in that building right now. Therefore, when you go onto a job like that, you often get paid really, really well. You get an emergency rate for kind of interrupting your day, and it is at the cost of interrupting your day. So the great need for HVAC installers right now continues to increase and is something that you should consider as a very stable outlook. Faster than average growth right now are the amount of job openings that there are. Huge demand and rises with new constructions and even retrofits of systems for HVAC installers at this point. So day to day, some of the lifestyle kind of things that you should expect is that your work sites will vary. And if you're like me, you're happy about that, right? Then in the place where I had to work in the same office building, the same cubicle, or maybe in the same control room when I was in a blue collar world as well every single day. And though there can be some comfort to that, seeing the same people and seeing the same things every single day and having the same expectations is not for me. It is for some people. This is not that job though. Going to different work sites, you're typically going to be both indoors actually installing this equipment, but you have to bring things from the outside in as well and from the inside out, meaning a lot of times there will be duct work, there will be supply lines of natural gas, there will be electrical that's going in there. And so whether it be trenching, installation, that types of thing, you're actually going to be outside as well. You might be in cramped spaces, you might be in hot spaces or in cold spaces as well. So there's going to be moments of go ahead and buy yourself the warming socks, to put in your boots. Go ahead and get yourself the right PPE and the kinds of things that can make you comfortable in uncomfortable situations, because you're going to be the person in there installing this equipment before it ever existed before. And in general, this is going to be a day shift kind of job, 7 to 3, let's say, 40 hours a week. There's the jobs that always extend, there's overtime available, there may be seasons or projects that really kind of stretch you. We've talked about that before. There may be emergency moments here as well. But for most people in HVAC installation, it will be a standard work week. As you near the end of that project, there are certain deadlines that you must hit. As a career ladder here for HVAC installation, there are a few things. As an installer, you can work maybe as an apprentice, then an installer owning that job yourself. Maybe you're now leading a team as installation. You might be a service technician or maybe even an auditor at that point. There are now opportunities like crazy to become a trainer in these areas. Maybe that be on the job or in a central location for a company that you're working for. You can instead maybe take the route from trainer into project management. And you also have the option of ultimately, at the end of the day, having and owning your own business. I know even at my own house right now, we have to install a new furnace in my house, and I have a friend who is doing that for me. He has a completely different job as he does, his 40 hours elsewhere, but on the weekends, he does this, and it pays him very well from the knowledge that he took from this career. So if you are really considering this type of career, there are some professional development features that you should be looking at. Stay current with codes. This is a huge deal, and they will routinely change. Keep up to date with efficient green tech. If you are going to be an HVAC installer, one of the best kind of conversations you're going to have on a pretty frequent basis with your clients is, if we're going to go to the effort of changing this system, what is it that we can do better for the next 10 years? What kind of energy can we use less? Which ways can we apply it? You might even have some knowledge on some of the smart systems themselves. So it's maybe not just the mechanical working of the equipment, but it may be the controllers as well that you keep up to date on. There are a myriad of different conferences, areas where you can learn about these types of things. There are a bunch of trade shows that you can go to, and there are products that are going on all the time that you can kind of get yourself used to and being able to talk about. And lastly, you might consider having a NATE certification as well to boost your hireability, to boost your credibility out in this industry. I encourage you at the end of this video to look at the description below and hit the link that actually will describe a day-to-day environment of somebody who's actually doing this work. You can see it not just from my face explaining it, but someone who's actually involved in it, enjoying it, and will give you kind of a clearer picture of what this might look like in your life. It'll help you to kind of create that picture. Another thing that I would encourage you to do is download our 90-day action plan. Considering to be an HVAC is not just a start tomorrow kind of deal. It does take some time and some consideration along the way. You might consider an apprenticeship route or trade school. And if you're going to do that, that involves an investment of time and possibly of some of your money as well. You want to make sure that you're doing the right things to make sure those steps are things that you actually want to be involved with. This 90-day action plan will help get you in line with answering some of those questions, even bringing up questions that you have but you didn't know how to materialize. We're going to help you do that.